Good morning and Papa's blessings to everybody today. I wanted to share a story with you that changed my life. It totally turned everything around for me. It happened when Chris and I, my husband and I, were going to the Living Well Church. And by the way, that is where he found his true relationship with Jesus, when he figured out that he could have a one-on-one relationship with Jesus. And I just send great love and blessings. I want to bless Pastor Ken and his wife Lucy and all of their family. They started us on this journey, this wonderful, beautiful journey that we've been on now. And so we were going to the Living Well Church, and Pastor Ken had to go somewhere for that Sunday. I don't remember where at this point. But we had a guest pastor, and it happened to be Pastor Rick Haymaker from Agape Church. And he came into the Living Well, and his sermon was on the woman at the well in John chapter 4. And he told a story like I've never heard that story told before. I knew the story, but I didn't understand the symbols or the significance of the story. So I wanted to share it with you today and hope that it impacts your life the way that it impacted mine. First of all, in John 4, it says that John 4:4. So we'll start with John 1 through 4. Therefore, when the Lord knew that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus made and baptized more disciples than John, though Jesus himself did not baptize but his disciples, he left Judea and departed again to Galilee. But he needed to go through Samaria. So he was going from Judea to Galilee, and on that journey, it says he needed to go through Samaria. Well, if you understand the geography of it, which I didn't at that time, you have to the south, at the bottom, Judea, and then there's Samaria, and then on top of that is Galilee at the farthest north. So you would think, if you didn't know, that he did have to go directly from Judea through Samaria to Galilee. But in those days, going through Samaria was a bad thing for the Jews. They didn't get along with Samaria, the Samaritans, because in their history, the Assyrians had conquered that tribe, that Judean tribe. They had conquered them, and they had mixed or interwoven their belief system with the Jewish belief system, so they weren't truly or purely Jewish, and some of the practices had what they would call a pagan background or an ungodly background. So to the south we had Judea, purely Jewish, and to the north we had Galilee, and they were, I would get purely Jewish too. They didn't have these pagan beliefs. So what would happen at that time is when they traveled from Judea to Galilee, they would kind of go around. It would be similar to if you're from Tucumcari or the eastern New Mexico side. You would think, because I-40, most people take I-40, that from Santa Rosa to get to Amarillo, you would have to go through Tucumcari, right? This is a west-east thing. You would have to, but you don't. There's many roads and detours that you can take to get to Amarillo from Santa Rosa and totally miss Tucumcari if you needed to. It's the same idea. But here in John 4 it says he needed to go through Samaria. So it was destined or ordained for Jesus to go through that place. Why? Because he was to meet the woman at the well. Now, beyond that, it says that he sat at the well, at Jacob's well, and he was wearied from his journey, and he was tired, and he was hungry, and his disciples had gone into the city to get food, and he sees a woman, and she went to the well at the 6th hour. I never knew the significance of that either. Well, the 6th hour of the day is noon, because we consider the first hour 6 a.m., so noon would be the 6th hour. And you have to wonder, why would she go at the 6th hour? Most people went, I believe if I'm correct, at the 3rd hour. Most women went to the well to draw water at 9 a.m. But this woman from Samaria went at noon. when you go on to read the story, it's a nice back and forth with Jesus and her, and she's kind of, she's a pistol, and she knows that she has a history. And what I realized is that she went to the well at the 6th hour to avoid everybody, to avoid all of the other women. And I did that for many years. I had my day timed perfectly to know when people in my hometown would be at the store, when it was the busiest, and when it was no one would be there, so that I could get away with going in, getting what I needed, and coming home. There were times when I would have my children go into the store because I just couldn't face the people there. I couldn't deal with what I perceived as judgment. And so this woman in John 4 is avoiding people. She's going to the well to draw water when she knows she can be safely alone. But on this day, she is met by Jesus. And they go back and forth about, he asks her for a drink. Then she asks him where his container is. And he tells her, John 4:10, if you knew the gift of God and who it is who says to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. Then the woman said to him, Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where then do you get the living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well, and drank from it himself, as well as his sons and his livestock? Jesus answered and said to her, Whoever drinks of this water, of Jesus' water, whoever drinks of this water, the water from the well, will thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him will never thirst. But the water that I shall give him will become in him a fountain of water, springing up into everlasting life. The woman said to him, Sir, give me this water, that I may not thirst, nor come here to draw. And Jesus said, Okay, sure. Go call your husband and come here. And the woman answered and said, I have no husband. And Jesus said to her, You've well said, I have no husband, for you have had 5 husbands. You have had 5 husbands, and the one whom you now have is not your husband. In that you spoke truly. And then the woman said, Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, and you Jews say that in Jerusalem, that is the place where one ought to worship. And Jesus said to her, Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour is coming, and now is when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such to worship. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship spirit and truth. And the woman said to him, I know that the Messiah is coming, who is called the Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things. Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am he. So, Jesus' encounter with this woman was extremely, extremely important, because not only was she a Samaritan of mixed heritage and mixed religion, she was also someone who struggled from what seemed like public judgment or public animosity. She'd been married 5 times. She was living with a man, so living in sin. And I had been married 2 times at the point that I heard this, and was living with a man, but not married to. And Jesus went to her. He went to explain to her that there is an hour coming when true worshipers, people from their soul, will worship him. and to let her know that he's seeking those people. That this judgment that comes of this world, the worldly judgment, is not the same as his judgment. It's grace. It's still the law. You still must be married in the eyes of God. But it's a grace like we've never known. It's a love like we've never known. And he loved her. He didn't judge her. He spoke to her when Jewish people back then wouldn't speak to a Samaritan. Or, you know, in our day it would be somebody of a certain color wouldn't speak to somebody else of a certain color, or a class, or it could just be a million things in today's world. But he showed her that he loved her. He loved her anyway. He talked to her. He pretty much told her, I already know. I already know your sin. I already know what you're going through. I already know why you're here at noon instead of at 9. And I love you anyway. So when the story ends, that when his disciples come back, they're marveling that he would even talk with a woman, a Samaritan woman, and then a woman without her husband present. And she was so shocked that she just left her water pot there and took off running back to the city to tell everybody to come and see this man, come and see this Christ that told her everything that she had ever done. So he's offering this Samaritan woman, this mixed breed person, this someone of mixed heritage who isn't practicing the purity of their religion. He's offering her salvation. He's telling her, if you knew who I was, all you would have to do is ask, and I will give you the living water. He's offering it to her. He's offering it to her. Someone who in those days should not be available to receive that kind of salvation. And he still does that today with people like me. So then when his disciples came back, they must have been shocked, because not only was he talking to a woman, he was talking to a Samaritan woman, and he was offering her the salvation that in those days was only available to a few select people. He was offering it to her. The significance of this story is that it's available to everybody, not just a chosen few, not just the people that grew up in a church, not just the people who have never made a mistake in their life, if there's any of us out there. And he's saying, salvation isn't about perfection. My love isn't about your perfection or non-sinning. It's about my grace and my love for you. It's about me loving you the way you are, just the way you are, telling you the truth about whatever it might be, your behavior, your history, letting you know I love you anyway, and you now walking with that knowledge of love, with that feeling of love, with that knowing of love in a different way. And then I realized that when we have an encounter with God that supersedes every bad thing we've ever done, every mistake we've ever made, and we have somebody who represents Jesus in the flesh, they walk with his light in them and tell you, you are redeemable. Nothing you have done can separate you from the love of God. And that is realized, and I realized that on that day. I realized that God comes to even women who have made mistakes, who ruined relationships, who have had bad relationships, who have looked to other people to fulfill her in life instead of looking to God. And he can still come to me and love me anyway. I need to tell that story to you guys, that even I'm redeemable. Even me, the woman who's been married twice, the woman who's been made mistake after mistake after mistake. And I'm sorry to all those people that I've hurt over the years. If I'm redeemable, everybody is. Everybody, anybody. All you have to do is grasp it. Know that He loves you anyway. That even if people are judging you, even if they can't forgive you for the things that you've done or said, Jesus loves you anyway. So today is the day that you get up and you walk with Him in mind and you open His Word and you learn His lessons. And when you're given the opportunity, you say you're sorry. You say I love you. And you worship Him in spirit and in truth. Peace out. I love you guys.